Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars drift past the main viewing screen. The deep space exploration mission had been quiet for 3 months, and Jake was starting to think they would return to Earth with nothing more than mineral surveys and star charts. DO Lisa Carter worked at her science station running scans of nearby planets, while communications specialist Elena Rodriguez monitored all frequencies for any signs of intelligent life to Liberty. Was humanity's most advanced ship built specifically for long-range exploration and first contact situations. Its crew of 200 included the best minds Earth could offer, along with enough firepower to handle most threats they might encounter in unknown space. Commander Ryan Beck sat at the tactical station, keeping watch over their weapons and shields. Even though they had not seen another ship in weeks, Jake had commanded exploration vessels for 15 years, but this mission felt different somehow. They were farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled before, and the unknown sectors ahead might contain anything from new resources to hostile alien civilizations. The ship's quantum engines hummed quietly as they moved deeper into unexplored territory. Elena suddenly straightened at her station and looked toward Jake with wide eyes. She had detected something on the long-range sensors that made her heart race with excitement and fear. Multiple large objects were approaching their position at incredible speed, and they were definitely not natural phenomena or space debris. "Captain, we have contact," Elena said in a steady voice that did not reveal her inner tension. 15 large vessels approaching from Sector 7 at high velocity. They will intercept our course in approximately 20 minutes. Jake felt his pulse quicken as he realized this was the moment every exploration captain both hoped for and dreaded. First contact with an alien species could mean the beginning of a new age for humanity, or it could mean the end of everything they knew and loved. "All hands to battle stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We may be about to meet our first alien neighbors, so everyone stay calm and follow protocols." Dr. Carter quickly switched her sensors to full power and began analyzing the approaching vessels. What she saw made her gasp in amazement and concern. The alien ships were massive structures that dwarfed even the Liberty, and their technology appeared to be centuries ahead of human capabilities. "Captain, these ships are enormous," Lisa reported. "The largest one is nearly 5 kilometers long, and I'm reading energy signatures that suggest weapon systems far beyond anything we possess." Ryan Beck activated the Liberty's defensive systems and prepared their plasma cannons for possible combat. The human weapons were powerful by Earth standards, but he wondered if they would be effective against such advanced alien technology. Alien fleet came to a stop just outside weapons range and maintained formation around the Liberty like predators, surrounding their prey. For several minutes, both sides simply observed each other across the void of space, while Jake tried to decide how to make peaceful contact. Elena received the first communication from the aliens and quickly ran it through the ship's translation computers. The message was simple and direct in a way that left no room for misunderstanding about the aliens' intentions. "Primitive vessel, you are now prisoners of the Zephyrian Empire," the message said in mechanical translated tones. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your species will serve the Empire or face extinction." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew and saw determination mixed with fear. They had trained for this situation, but nothing could truly prepare someone for the reality of facing a hostile alien empire that viewed humans as nothing more than potential slaves. "Open a channel," Jake ordered Elena. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Liberty. We come in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation between our peoples. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The alien response came quickly, and with obvious irritation at Jake's refusal to immediately surrender. The voice belonged to someone accustomed to instant obedience and clearly annoyed by human defiance. "I am War Commander Dexval of the Hegemony Fleet," the alien replied. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels. Submit now and your deaths. We'll be quick and merciful. Resist and we will make examples of your entire species." Jake made a decision that would change the course of human history. Instead of surrendering or attempting further diplomacy, he ordered Ryan to target the nearest alien vessel with everything the Liberty had. If humans were going to die today, they would die fighting the Liberty's plasma cannons fired in perfect coordination, sending streams of superheated energy toward the alien ships. To everyone's surprise, the shots penetrated the alien shields and caused visible damage to their hull plating. The Zephyrians had not expected primitive humans to possess weapons capable of threatening their technology. War Commander Dexville stared at his damage reports in disbelief. No species had successfully attacked a hegemony vessel in over 2 centuries, and yet these unknown humans had just proven their weapons were far more advanced than initial scans suggested. First battle between humans and aliens began with both sides realizing they had seriously underestimated their opponents. The Liberty fought with desperate courage, while the Zephyrian fleet attacked with growing respect for human capabilities. What started as a simple conquest had become something much more complicated and dangerous for both species involved. The emergency session in the White House Situation Room buzzed with tension as President Maria Gonzalez reviewed the reports from the Liberty. General Kevin Walsh spread tactical displays across the table, while Admiral Susan Clark studied the alien ship configurations that Captain Morrison had transmitted before the communication. Blackout. How long since we lost contact with the Liberty, President? Gonzalez asked while examining the grainy images of Zephyrian vessels that looked more like floating cities than military ships. The scale of the alien technology was intimidating, but she had not become president by backing down from challenges. 18 hours, Madam President, Admiral Clark replied. Captain Morrison's last transmission indicated they were holding their own against superior numbers, but we have no way of knowing current battle status. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Emperor Kefmer paced in his throne room aboard the flagship, Dominator reading reports that frustrated and confused him. War Commander Dexville had reported successful first contact with a new species, but the humans were proving far more troublesome than expected. The Emperor had ruled the Zephyrian Empire for 40 years, and in that time, no species had ever successfully resisted their initial conquest fleets. The standard procedure was simple: arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and absorb the new territory into the Empire within days. How is this possible? Emperor Kefmer demanded of his military advisors. Dexville commands our most EXPERIENCED fleet against a single primitive vessel, yet the battle continues. Are our warriors becoming weak? Fleet Admiral Vox then stepped forward with the tactical analysis his staff had prepared. He was the Empire's most successful military commander, with 17 conquered worlds to his credit, but the human resistance patterns made no sense according to traditional Zephyrian military doctrine. The humans fight unlike any species we have encountered, Your Majesty, Voxton explained. They use unpredictable tactics that exploit weaknesses in our standard attack formations. Their single ship has caused more damage than entire planetary defense fleets. Back on the Liberty, Dr. Lisa Carter worked feverishly to analyze captured Zephyrian technology fragments from their damaged ships. What she discovered changed everything the crew thought they knew about their alien opponents. Captain, I think I understand why we're still alive, Lisa announced as Jake Morrison surveyed the battle damage to his ship. The Zephyrians have incredible individual ship power, but their tactics are completely rigid. They expect enemies to fight in predictable patterns, Commander Ryan Beck had noticed the same thing during the ongoing skirmishes. The alien vessels were enormously powerful, but they moved in fixed formations and their weapons targeting systems seemed designed for fighting large, slow-moving targets rather than a single agile ship. Lieutenant Commander Alex Johnson had been developing new tactical approaches based on ancient human military strategies adapted for space combat. His hit-and-run attacks kept the Zephyrian fleet off balance while the Liberty struck at weak points in their formation. We need to think like pirates, not like a traditional navy, Alex explained to the bridge crew. The aliens expect us to form battle lines and trade shots with their superior firepower. Instead, we hit them fast and disappear before they can respond effectively. The Liberty darted between the massive Zephyrian ships, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the heaviest weapons, while targeting critical systems with precise strikes. Elena Rodriguez had discovered that Zephyrian communications were highly centralized, and disrupting their command ship created confusion throughout their entire fleet. War Commander Dexville found himself in an impossible situation as his carefully planned attack fell apart under human tactical innovations. His ships were individually superior, but the humans fought with a creativity and flexibility that made them extremely difficult to pin down and destroy. These humans are not like other species, Dexville reported to Emperor Kefmer during a brief lull in the fighting. They adapt their tactics constantly and seem to learn from each engagement. Our standard doctrines are proving inadequate. On Earth, President Gonzalez made the decision to send reinforcements under Captain Danny Torres, commanding a small task force of humanity's newest warships. The journey would take weeks, but the message was clear. Earth would not abandon the Liberty or allow humanity to be conquered without a fight. Captain Torres studied the tactical reports from the Liberty during his voyage and worked with his own tactical officers to develop new strategies based on Jake Morrison's successful resistance. The human ships were still outnumbered and outgunned, but they would not fight alone. Dr. Carter made another crucial discovery while analyzing Zephyrian military communications. The alien empire had never faced sustained resistance from any species, and their entire military structure was built around the assumption of quick, decisive victories against technologically inferior opponents. Their whole system depends on psychological warfare, Lisa explained to Captain Morrison. They show up with massive fleets, demand surrender, and most species give up without fighting. They've never had to develop tactics for dealing with determined resistance. The revelation changed how the Liberty's crew viewed their situation. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but proving that the mighty Zephyrian empire could be challenged and defeated by anyone willing to fight smart rather than surrender. Immediately, Alex Johnson began broadcasting tactical data back to Earth whenever possible, knowing that human military strategists would adapt and improve his methods. Each successful engagement against the Zephyrians provided valuable intelligence that would help future human forces. The second major battle occurred when Captain Torres arrived with his task force and found the Liberty still engaged with War Commander Dexville's battered fleet. The fresh human ships immediately implemented the new tactics. Developed during weeks of hit-and-run fighting, the combined human force used coordinated strikes and false retreats to draw Zephyrian ships into disadvantageous positions before hitting them with concentrated firepower. The aliens had never encountered such sophisticated tactical coordination from what they considered a primitive species. War Commander Dexville watched in growing amazement as human vessels executed complex maneuvers that his own ships could not match despite their superior technology. The humans fought with a level of tactical innovation that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare for the first time in his military career. Dexville began to respect his opponents as equals rather than viewing them as inferior beings to be conquered. The humans had earned their right to exist through courage, skill, and tactical brilliance that impressed even their enemies. War Commander Dexville stood in his private quarters staring at the tactical reports from his latest engagement with the human fleet. 3 more of his ships had suffered heavy damage, while the humans continued to fight with tactics that seemed to evolve and improve with each battle. For the first time in his 30-year military career, he began to question the Empire's assumption that all other species were inherently inferior. The brief truces between battles had provided unexpected opportunities for communication with Captain Morrison and his crew. During prisoner exchanges and damage assessment periods, Dexville found himself engaging in conversations that challenged his fundamental beliefs about the nature of warfare and civilization. Why do you resist when surrender would save so many lives? Dexville asked during one of these exchanges. Captain Morrison's response had been simple but profound in its implications for how Dexville viewed the conflict. Because some things are worth dying for, Morrison had replied. Freedom is not something you can give up and expect to get back later. Once you surrender your right to make your own choices, you become a slave forever. The concept of choosing death over subjugation was completely foreign to Zephyrian military doctrine, which emphasized survival and service to the Empire above all other considerations. Dexville began to wonder what kind of society could produce warriors who would rather die than live under foreign rule on. The Zephyrian homeworld Dr. Rebecca Stone's cultural broadcasts were reaching audiences that the Empire had never expected. To influence, her educational transmissions about human history, art, and philosophy were being received by civilian populations. Across multiple star systems, Rebecca had convinced Captain Morrison to allow her to begin broadcasting during the brief communication windows between battles. Her programs covered everything from human scientific achievements to artistic masterpieces and democratic political systems that put individual rights above state power. Young Zephyrians, like researcher Cithanel, discovered these transmissions while monitoring enemy communications for military intelligence. What they found instead was a window into a completely different way of organizing society based on principles they had never encountered before. Look at this, Cithanel whispered to his colleague while reviewing human historical documents. They had something called the Renaissance, where individual creativity was celebrated and encouraged. Artists and scientists were free to explore any ideas they wanted without government approval. The concept of intellectual freedom was revolutionary to Zephyrians who had lived their entire lives under strict governmental control of all education, research, and artistic expression. The Empire decided what citizens could learn, what they could create, and what ideas they were allowed to discuss. Cithanel began secretly sharing human cultural materials with other young researchers who were fascinated by concepts like democratic elections, freedom of speech, and individual rights. These ideas spread through underground networks faster than Empire security forces could track and suppress them. Ambassador Carl Martinez arrived with the human diplomatic mission during a temporary ceasefire negotiated by Captain Morrison and War Commander Dexville. Carl brought with him a complete library of human literature, scientific papers, and historical documents about peaceful social change. "We don't want to conquer your people," Carl explained to Dexville during their first formal meeting. "We want to show them that there are other ways to live besides constant warfare and expansion. Your own citizens deserve the right to choose their own destiny." The ambassador's words troubled Dexville because they implied that the Empire was denying basic rights to its own people. He had never questioned whether Zephyrian citizens were truly happy with their lives or whether they might prefer different social arrangements. If given the choice, Dr. Stone's broadcast began including interviews with human citizens from all walks of life who explained how democratic societies function and why individual freedom was so important to human development. These programs showed Zephyrian audiences that prosperity and happiness were possible without authoritarian control. Emperor Kefmer received increasingly disturbing reports from his intelligence services about civilian unrest on multiple worlds. Citizens were asking questions about Empire policies, discussing forbidden political concepts, and even organizing unauthorized gatherings to share human cultural materials. "How are these human ideas spreading so quickly?" the Emperor demanded of his security chief. "We have the most advanced surveillance and control systems in the galaxy, yet our own people are being corrupted by primitive alien propaganda." The answer was that human ideas appealed to basic desires for freedom and self-determination that existed in all intelligent species. The Zephyrian Empire had suppressed these natural impulses for generations, but never eliminated them. Completely, War Commander Dexville found himself caught between his loyalty to the Empire and his growing respect for human principles. His conversations with Captain Morrison had revealed that human military effectiveness came not from fear or coercion, but from voluntary cooperation and shared commitment to protecting their way of life. "Your soldiers fight better because they choose to fight," Dexville observed during one of their diplomatic meetings. "My warriors serve because they must. There is a difference in motivation that shows in battle effectiveness." Captain Morrison nodded and explained. how human military forces were built on principles of mutual respect, individual dignity, and shared sacrifice for common goals. Soldiers who believed in their cause and trusted their leaders fought with courage and creativity that could not be matched by forced conscripts. The philosophical discussions between human and Zephyrian officers during truces began to influence lower-ranking personnel on both sides. Zephyrian soldiers started questioning why they were fighting to conquer people who had done them no harm, while human crew members gained deeper appreciation for their own freedoms. Dr. Stone established contact with Cithanel and other Zephyrian intellectuals who were hungry for more information about human scientific methods and democratic institutions. These secret communications networks became the foundation for a growing resistance movement within the Empire. The young Zephyrian researcher discovered that human technological advancement came from open scientific collaboration rather than centralized military research programs. Scientists were free to share ideas across national boundaries and even compete with each other in ways that accelerated overall progress. Imagine if we could research whatever interested us without waiting for government approval, Cithanel told his colleagues. Think of what we might discover if scientists were free to follow their curiosity wherever it led them. These conversations were taking place in secret meeting rooms across the Zephyrian Empire as more and more citizens were exposed to human ideas about individual rights, creative freedom, and democratic governance. The Empire's foundation was beginning to crack under the pressure of concepts it had never successfully suppressed. Dr. Rebecca Stone watched her transmission statistics with amazement as her cultural exchange programs reached over 50 million Zephyrian citizens across 12 star systems. Communications officer Elena Rodriguez had helped her establish secure BROADCAST networks that Empire censors could not completely block despite their best efforts. Human educational content was spreading through Zephyrian society like wildfire because it offered answers to questions that people had been asking themselves for generations. Why did they have no voice in government decisions? Why were scientists forbidden from pursuing certain research topics? Why could artists only create works approved by state committees? Dr. Nathan Wright joined Rebecca's cultural mission, bringing expertise in human social movements and peaceful revolution techniques. His broadcast focused on how oppressed populations could organize for change without violence while protecting themselves from government retaliation. The most powerful weapon against tyranny is education, Nathan explained to his Zephyrian audience. When people understand their rights and learn about alternative ways of organizing society, they become impossible to control through fear and propaganda. Researcher Cithanel had become the unofficial leader of a growing network of Zephyrian intellectuals who were secretly studying human philosophy, science, and political theory. His underground groups now included scientists, artists, teachers, and even some military officers who were questioning their loyalty to the Empire. The revelation that human technological superiority came from collaborative research rather than centralized control was transforming how Zephyrian scientists viewed their own work. They began to understand that their greatest discoveries had always come from individual creativity rather than following official research guidelines. Look at their medical advances, Cithanel showed his colleagues during a secret meeting. Human doctors share their knowledge freely across their entire planet. They work together to solve problems instead of competing for government funding and approval. Young Zephyrian scientists started conducting unauthorized research projects based on human scientific methods. They shared their findings with colleagues in other star systems, creating the first independent research networks in Empire history. Captain Morrison received regular updates about the growing civilian resistance movement within Zephyrian territory. Ambassador Carl Martinez was coordinating with human intelligence services to provide support for peaceful democratic activists while avoiding direct interference in internal Zephyrian affairs. The human diplomatic strategy was simple but effective. Provide information, education, and moral support while allowing Zephyrian citizens to make their own choices about what kind of society they wanted. This approach was far more threatening to the Empire than military conquest would have been. War Commander Dexval noticed declining morale among his own troops as more soldiers were exposed to human prisoners, who treated them with respect and dignity. The contrast with their own military's harsh discipline and rigid hierarchy was becoming impossible to ignore. "Why do human prisoners treat us better than our own officers?" one young Zephyrian soldier asked during a private conversation with Vexval. The question revealed how deeply human ideas about individual dignity were penetrating even military ranks. Fleet Admiral Voxten arrived with reinforcements for the ongoing campaign against human forces, but found his own crews contaminated by exposure to human cultural transmissions. Many of his officers were asking uncomfortable questions about the morality of conquering peaceful civilizations. The Admiral convened an emergency meeting with his senior commanders to address the growing ideological crisis within their ranks. What he discovered was that human ideas were more dangerous to Empire stability than human weapons could ever be. "Our soldiers are beginning to think like humans," one commander reported. "They question orders, they debate tactics, and some even suggest we should negotiate peaceful coexistence instead of demanding surrender." Emperor Kefmer faced his worst nightmare as reports reached him of entire colonial governments declaring independence from the Empire. The rebels were using human political concepts like self-determination and democratic representation to justify their resistance. The Kepler colony was the first to formally break away from Empire control, establishing a provisional government based on human democratic principles. Their declaration of independence was broadcast across Zephyrian space, inspiring similar movements on other worlds. "We hold these truths to be self-evident," the Kepler Declaration began using language borrowed directly from human historical documents. "That all intelligent beings are created equal and possess inherent rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The words sent shockwaves through the Empire because they expressed ideas that had been forbidden for centuries, but obviously appealed to basic desires present in all Zephyrian citizens. The colonial rebellion was spreading faster than military forces could respond. Dr. Stone established direct communication links with Zephyrian resistance leaders, providing them with detailed information about successful peaceful revolutions throughout human history. Her broadcast now included practical advice about organizing democratic movements and protecting civil rights. Researcher Cithino was elected to lead the newly formed Zephyrian Democratic Alliance, a secret organization dedicated to transforming their society through peaceful means. His scientific background helped him understand how human democratic institutions could be adapted for Zephyrian culture. Underground resistance networks that had started as small groups of intellectuals sharing forbidden books had grown into a massive movement involving millions of citizens across dozens of worlds. They communicated through encrypted channels borrowed from human technology. Captain Morrison began offering sanctuary to Zephyrian defectors who could no longer serve an empire that contradicted their developing moral convictions. These refugees provided valuable intelligence about internal conditions while serving as living examples of successful integration between species. War Commander Dexville faced the most difficult decision of his career as he watched his own government lose control over populations that no longer believed in the righteousness of their cause. The human ideas that had seemed so harmless at first were destroying everything he had devoted his life to defending. "Perhaps they are right," Vexville confided to his most trusted aide. "Perhaps there is a better way to organize civilization than through conquest and control. These humans have shown us possibilities we never imagined." The military campaign continued, but both sides knew that the real battle was taking place in the minds and hearts of ordinary Zephyrian citizens who were discovering that they had choices. Their government had never wanted them to know about human ideas about freedom. Democracy and individual rights were proving more contagious than any biological weapon and more destructive to authoritarian control than any military force. The empire was crumbling from within as its own people embraced the revolutionary concept that they deserved better lives. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing from within as human ideas triggered the largest civilian uprising in galactic history. On 17 different worlds, populations that had lived under authoritarian rule for generations suddenly discovered. They had voices and rights that no government could legitimately suppress. War Commander Dexville made the decision that would define the rest of his life when he contacted Captain Morrison with an offer to defect to the human side. His message was simple but carried enormous implications for the ongoing conflict between their species. I can no longer serve an empire that denies basic dignity to its own people. Dexville transmitted to the Liberty. Your human ideals have shown me that there are principles worth fighting for that transcend loyalty to any government. The news of Dexville's defection spread through both fleets like lightning. For Zephyrian forces, it represented the ultimate betrayal of everything they had been taught about duty and obedience. For human crews, it proved that their values could inspire even their enemies to choose freedom over tyranny. Captain Morrison welcomed Dexville aboard the Liberty with the respect due to a fellow officer who had made a difficult moral choice. The former war commander brought with him detailed intelligence about Empire military capabilities and internal weaknesses that will prove invaluable. Your people deserve the same freedoms that humans take for granted, Morrison told Dexville during their first meeting as allies. We're not fighting to conquer the Zephyrian Empire, but to liberate it from rulers who have forgotten that governments exist to serve their citizens. Dexville's defection inspired other high-ranking Zephyrian officers to question their own loyalty to Emperor Kethmer. Commander Zexlin and Admiral Wakhtar both contacted human forces with offers to share intelligence about planned Empire operations. Dr. Lisa Carter worked closely with defected Zephyrian scientists, including researcher Sifino, to develop new technologies through collaborative research methods. Their joint projects produced innovations that surpassed anything either species had achieved. Working alone, when we combine human creativity with Zephyrian technical knowledge, the results are amazing, Lisa explained to Captain Morrison as they reviewed the latest research findings. This is what happens when scientists are free to share ideas without political restrictions. The collaborative research teams became living proof that cooperation produced better results than competition or coercion. Their breakthrough discoveries in faster-than-light communication and defensive shield technology demonstrated the practical benefits of democratic scientific methods. Emperor Kethmer watched his empire disintegrate as more colonies declared independence, and even loyal worlds experienced widespread civil unrest. The human ideas that had seemed like harmless propaganda were destroying the foundation of everything he had built during his reign. How do we fight an enemy that conquers minds instead of territory? The emperor asked his remaining advisors. The question revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of what was happening to his civilization fleet. Admiral Vox then attempted one final military campaign to crush the human forces and restore Empire authority through decisive victory. He commanded the largest Zephyrian fleet ever assembled with orders to destroy all human ships and eliminate the source of dangerous democratic ideas. Massive fleet included 12 heavy battle cruisers supported by hundreds of smaller vessels carrying enough firepower to devastate entire star systems. Voxton was confident that overwhelming force would succeed where previous tactics had failed. Captain Morrison now commanded a combined fleet of human and defected Zephyrian vessels, united by shared commitment to democratic principles rather than fear of punishment. His forces were outnumbered but fought with the courage that comes from defending deeply held beliefs. The decisive battle took place in the Centauri system, where both fleets met in the largest space engagement in recorded history. What happened next shocked military observers on both sides and changed the course of galactic civilization entire. Zephyrian squadrons refused to fire on the combined fleet when they realized they would be attacking their own people fighting for freedom. The rigid military discipline that had held the empire together for centuries crumbled as soldiers chose conscience over orders. Admiral Vox then watched in horror as his own ships defected to the enemy's side during the middle of combat. His carefully planned attack became a rout as more and more Zephyrian crews decided they could no longer fight against their own liberation. This is impossible, Vox then transmitted to his remaining loyal vessels. How can an entire fleet turn against their own government in the middle of battle? The answer was that the Zephyrian military was composed of individuals who had been exposed to human ideas about personal responsibility and moral choice. When forced to choose between blind obedience and doing what they believed was right, many chose. Freedom War Commander Dexville found himself in the strange position of commanding former enemies against his old comrades. His tactical knowledge of Zephyrian military procedures proved crucial in convincing entire battle groups to switch sides. You don't have to fight for a government that treats you as expendable, Dexville broadcast to the Empire fleet. Join U.S. and help build a society where every citizen has value and every voice matters. Ambassador Carl Martinez worked frantically to establish communication channels with emerging Zephyrian democratic movements on dozens of worlds. His diplomatic team helped coordinate resistance activities while providing frameworks for peaceful transition to democratic governance. Human diplomatic approach focused on supporting local leaders rather than imposing external solutions. Each world was encouraged to develop its own version of democratic institutions. Adapted to local culture and circumstances, Dr. Rebecca Stone's cultural broadcasts reached their largest audience as Empire. Censorship systems completely collapsed under the pressure of widespread civil disobedience. Her programs now included direct coverage of democratic elections being held on liberated Zephyrian worlds. The first free elections in Zephyrian history took place on the Kepler colony, where citizens voted to establish a representative government based on human democratic principles. The peaceful transition of power amazed observers who had never seen leadership change without violence. Researcher Cithano was elected as the first democratically chosen leader of the former Kepler colony. His scientific background and commitment to human ideals made him a natural choice for citizens who wanted fundamental change. Emperor Kefmer faced complete military and political collapse as his remaining forces either defected or simply stopped following orders. The empire that had once controlled 17 star systems was reduced to his personal flagship and a handful of loyal vessels. Revolution had succeeded not through military conquest, but through the simple power of ideas that appealed to the basic human desire for freedom, dignity, and self-determination. Every intelligent being wanted the right to make their own choices about how to live. The signing ceremony for the Terran-Zephyrian Alliance took place aboard the Liberty in the same conference room where Captain Morrison had first met War Commander Dexville as enemies. Now they stood together as allies representing two species. United by shared commitment to freedom, democracy, and mutual respect, President Maria Gonzalez arrived from Earth to witness the historic moment when former enemies became partners in building a better future for both civilizations. The Alliance Charter was based on principles of individual rights, democratic governance, and cooperative exploration rather than conquest. Today we prove that differences between species can become sources of strength rather than causes for conflict, President Gonzalez said during the ceremony. When intelligent beings choose cooperation over domination, everyone benefits from the exchange of ideas and cultures. Dexville had adopted a human name, calling himself simply Vex, as he took the oath of office as the first Zephyrian ambassador to Earth. His transformation from military commander to diplomatic leader symbolized the broader changes taking place throughout former Empire territory. The 17 worlds that had once formed the Zephyrian Empire were now independent democratic republics, each choosing its own path forward while maintaining cooperative relationships with humanity and each other. The diversity of approaches proved that democracy could adapt to different cultures and circumstances. Dr. Rebecca Stone stood before the first class of the Interspecies University, watching human and Zephyrian students work together on joint research projects. The institution represented everything she had hoped to achieve through cultural exchange programs that had helped transform an entire civilization. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Rebecca told her students. When we share what we learn, we all become stronger and wiser. The greatest discoveries come from combining different perspectives and approaches to understanding the universe. Young humans and Zephyrians sat side by side in classrooms that would have been impossible to imagine just months earlier. They learned from each other's cultures while developing new ideas that neither species could have developed. Alone Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commanded the joint exploration fleet that included both human and Zephyrian vessels exploring the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as ambassadors of peace and cooperation. Their mission was to make contact with other species and share the benefits of democratic civilization. The joint crews worked together with an efficiency that amazed military observers from both species. Human creativity combined with Zephyrian technical precision produced results that exceeded what either group could achieve. Independently, Commander Ryan Beck served as tactical officer aboard the flagship of the joint fleet, working alongside former enemies who had become trusted colleagues. The cooperation between species that had recently been at war proved that differences could be overcome. Through mutual respect, Dr. Lisa Carter led the joint scientific research programs that were producing breakthrough discoveries in fields ranging from faster-than-light travel to medical treatments that worked for both human and Zephyrian biology. The collaborative approach yielded innovations neither species had imagined possible. Researcher Sithinel now called himself simply. Sith worked closely with human scientists to develop new technologies that would benefit all member worlds of the Alliance. His expertise in Zephyrian engineering, combined with human research methods, created possibilities that excited scientists throughout known space. First joint colony world was established in the Andromeda system, where humans and Zephyrians worked together to build a society that incorporated the best aspects of both cultures. The colonists developed new forms of democratic governance that took advantage of both species' strengths. Children of both species grew up together, learning each other's languages and customs while developing their own unique cultural blend. They represented a new generation that saw diversity as strength and cooperation as the natural way to approach challenges. Ambassador Carl Martinez worked with Sith and other democratic leaders to establish the Galactic Democratic Council, an organization dedicated to promoting peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation among all intelligent species. The Council's charter guaranteed basic rights and freedoms for all sentient beings. Rodriguez now served as communications coordinator for the Alliance, helping establish translation protocols and cultural exchange programs that would prevent the misunderstandings that often led to conflict between different species. The success of human-Zephyrian cooperation inspired other species to seek membership in the growing alliance. The Arcturian Republic and the Centauri Federation both applied for associate membership after observing the benefits of democratic cooperation. Dr. Nathan Wright established the Institute for Peaceful Revolution, providing training and support for populations living under authoritarian governments throughout the galaxy. His programs helped oppressed peoples achieve freedom through education and nonviolent resistance rather than warfare. Emperor Kethmer had been granted asylum on a neutral world where he lived quietly under the protection of the Alliance. His former subjects chose mercy over revenge, proving that democratic societies could break cycles of violence and retribution. Transformation of the Zephyrian Empire into a collection of free democratic republics became a case study taught throughout the galaxy as proof that authoritarian governments could be peacefully replaced with systems that respected individual rights and dignity. Trade between human and Zephyrian worlds flourished as both species discovered the economic benefits of voluntary cooperation compared to the inefficiencies of forced tribute systems. Prosperity increased dramatically when people were free to pursue their own interests. The joint military forces of the Alliance focused on exploration and peacekeeping rather than conquest. Their presence in disputed regions helped prevent conflicts between other species while demonstrating the benefits of diplomatic solutions to territorial disagreements. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, watching the joint human-Zephyrian colony ship depart for a newly discovered world where both species would work together to build something neither could create alone. The sight filled him with hope for the future of galactic civilization. Final scene showed children of both species playing together in the Gardens of New Harmony, the first fully integrated colony world where humans and Zephyrians had created a society that celebrated diversity while maintaining unity of purpose. Story concluded with the reflection that humanity's greatest victory had not been military conquest, but the peaceful transformation of an entire civilization through the simple power of ideas about freedom, democracy, and individual dignity. The weapons that had earned initial respect were forgotten, while the values that had won hearts and minds continued to spread throughout the galaxy. Human ideals of liberty and democracy proved more powerful than any military force because they appealed to fundamental desires present in all intelligent beings. The greatest battles were won not with plasma cannons, but with book schools and the revolutionary concept that every individual deserved the right to choose their own destiny.